So what did you do to fix the color, by the way, Legion?
He just stopped capturing that your camera entirely. It's just replaced it with a cartoon he drew.
It's just Banana's thing that he made for you.
Yeah, it's just one of those pictures we've used in the thumbnail before.
Oh, that'd be so good.
With just the Groucho Marx glasses on. It's perfect.
Understood. Okay. It's something like audio I know a lot more about. Have I frozen?
Yeah, for a second. Well,
you did.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's all we got was audio while you were saying that's what you're more
good at that. But this?
Now you're dark.
I don't know what I just did.
Yeah.
I think I f***ed it.
No, you're good. You're good.
Perfect. That's exactly what we were hoping for. Just Legion's plan the whole time.
I mean, you look better than I do.
Real, though.
Before we begin, the Gamer's Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome on into yet another episode of the Gamer's Advocate podcast. You have a good sip there, Banana? Hope you enjoyed that.
It's every goddamn time. I'm never ready for the episode to start.
Should we just quickly tell the people what Legion's final words were before this started?
Just those last two.
I said, deja woo.
Deja woo.
Well, we have the gorgeous and entertaining AMKomnenos and the equally beautiful and intelligent BananaHammockRepublic.
I don't know why I really thought you were just going to go. And also Banana's here.
Well, today we're going to start off with a interesting idea concept that I didn't realize kind of came our way. And Mr. AMKomnenos has played a game called Final Fantasy Rebirth. I've never gotten into the Final Fantasy game or series, even though they came out when I was, a kid. I could have gotten straight into the Final Fantasy games. I just never got into it. So it wasn't, and then by the time it came, Final Fantasy 7 came out on the PlayStation, didn't have one. I had my own kids. I was focused on that. I was PC gamer at that point. It just completely passed me by. So it wasn't ever anything that I was on my radar, I should say. Banana has played Final Fantasy 7, but he has not done Rebirth. So I think it would be kind of an interesting subject to cover since it's going to come out on PC. And I was just kind of wondering if that's a game that is worth an addition to the wish list.
Time to kick it up a notch.
The time has come.
Sephiroth!
At last, our long-awaited reunion.
Now, to be clear, I think we're not going to do like a rating or a review or anything like that. It's just Com's impressions of the game.
I just really like the framing of this. We're going to do something interesting and talk about a video game for a change of pace.
Yeah, for a change of pace, we're going to talk about something interesting.
Well, I think that's the first thing, isn't it? We really establishes this isn't a debate. This isn't a back and forth. This isn't I hold point A, Banana holds position B. This isn't that. This isn't me giving it a 10 out of 10 at the end, although it would get one. This is why I like it, really, and the feeling that I like it and that I'd like you to have it at some point. And that's really just where we are. Why it gives me the warm and horny feelings on the inside.
I feel like that second point doesn't need to be explained.
Yes, it does.
I think the fact that people got horny feelings from the original really showcases that nobody really needs an explanation of how that came to be.
That's
In
true.
the graphics that we had at the time, it's pretty clear evidence that people are going to get those horny feelings based on themselves. It's just what they want.
And speaking of horny feelings, take it away, Legion.
Well, I can honestly say from my point of view, from a person who's not familiar with this series, the first thing that turns me off on a game like that is that it's number 7. Like, wait a minute. How do I start in the middle of a series and still expect to be caught up with everything? So is that something that could I go into Rebirth and never played a Final Fantasy game before?
Well, I think what you need to do is we need to separate you and Banana.
Not Rebirth. You can go into the remake, I would say.
Well, this is it. We need to separate you and Banana right now, because I've got 2 different positions for you. I think Banana should definitely play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think you shouldn't yet. And it's really because of where do you start and where do you not. So Banana we'll get onto because that's the more general tone of the podcast. This is more specific for someone who hasn't played Final Fantasy. Why shouldn't you start here? Well, twofold. First of all, the Final Fantasy games, they do go out in order of Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, etc., all the way through until 16. Now, these are independent entries, generally speaking. 7 does not have anything to do with 8, does not have anything to do with 9, does not have anything to do with 4, and so on and so forth. So, you can start anywhere. However, within each of these, there are then often these sub-levels. So, Final Fantasy 7 is its own thing, but it also has an accompanying movie. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. It also has a prequel, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It also has the remake and Rebirth, the 2 games. So your problem right now is if you wanted to start with 7, you'd have 2 possible places to start. And you'd have to take 2 different routes, in my opinion. You would start either with the original Final Fantasy VII, or you would start with Final Fantasy Remake, the first part of the remake trilogy. And that's where you'd have to begin. And then you decide how you took the next steps based on that. If you played the original, I'd say you now don't go and play Remake yet. You go back and play Crisis Core, because that's going to enhance your enjoyment of this. On the other hand, if you start a Remake, you don't play Crisis Core, because that's going to spoil something for the story later. So your part's going to be different. I'd recommend you don't start with 7 anyway, though. You don't start with 7, you don't start with Remake, you don't start with Rebirth. My general advice, if anyone here has never played a Final Fantasy game, start with Final Fantasy X. I think it is the most welcoming of the Final Fantasies. It's got the most in common between the old games and the new games, and it's just very approachable. It's not too opaque, it's not too obtuse. The story happens to the main character. The main character is not just a bystander, while it happens to other members of the party, like happen in some of the games. It's modern enough that it's easy to play, whilst having enough links with the past that it's a true Final Fantasy experience in inverted commas. If you're going to start Final Fantasy today, don't start with 10. And if you insist on starting with 7, start with the original or the game named Remake, not Rebirth. So, for Banana, it's a more general idea of, does Banana play the trilogy, or forthcoming trilogy of Remake, Rebirth, and game coming up? TBA, TBD. The short answer is yes. The big question is, why wouldn't you initially? So I think you really need to look for why wouldn't you to begin with. Okay, why wouldn't someone play this game? I think one set of people shouldn't. If you just want the original game, if you are immensely and hugely disappointed that the remake did what it says, it remade the game in a storytelling sense. It altered the game. It updated the combat. It updated the story. It updated the characters. Updated the way we tell the story. If you don't want that, and you are sure to 100%, don't play it. If you have the slightest inkling that these games might interest you, you should play them, because the quality is that high. The first thing I would go for is it's the game we say we want. And I don't mean this in Final Fantasy, I mean this in AAA gaming. We say we want AAA games that are new, that are unique, that try something different. We want AAA games that come without microtransactions. We want AAA games that are reasonably bug-free. We want AAA games that release in a complete, full form. And we want AAA games that are loved by their studios. That's what we want. If you want that, that's what this is. This will do all of those things. So for me, that's enough. If you like Final Fantasy VII, that's enough already. If you want a high-quality game, that's enough already. So my question would be, why wouldn't you play it?
Yeah, Banana, why wouldn't you play it?
Oh, this is a more general question. It's not a targeted
Well-
question at Banana. It's what would be the point of not playing it to
I
begin
saw
with?
Banana's
let me
eyes
explain
going
to
back
you-
and forth.
How money works. And that's why I wouldn't play it. It's because they want me to pay for this game and I don't have any money.
Okay,
That's really
that
it.
That point we can deal with. Have you heard of crime?
Yeah.
No. Okay, yeah. Outside of that
Yeah,
simple reason.
I
But then
love that.
again,
So my big question for our audience is, why aren't you out robbing banks so that you can play the remake?
so the Banana Campaign remake, we have a PayPal link below.
Yeah, I'll put my P.O. box. You can mail me a PlayStation and the game, and I'll play it.
But I think for someone like Banana, who has an investment in this world, and I think Banana isn't someone who would live in the past per se, but who is stuck in the past. Banana has the games they like from their childhood, but Banana is also open to new games and wants to play new things. And I think Banana is someone who wants to see gaming improve, wants to see an evolution on what came before. And I think the game offers that. It offers a chance to play a classic story in video gaming, a classic story, and makes it much more palatable for people in the 21st century. Go back and play Final Fantasy VII now, and it's not the best game you will ever play. Almost certainly not if you're not playing it, if you are playing it for the first time. You're going to go back and you're going to see the teething pains that we had with gaming. You're going to go back and see awkwardnesses in the story. You're going to go back and you're going to see how those two main optional characters, Yuffie and Vincent, my thumb was up there as well, the two main optional characters in that game, Yuffie and Vincent, don't really have stories. They have these very, very short tales which you have to go looking for, but the characters don't have much personality. The way they're not included in certain key scenes because most people wouldn't necessarily have them in the party. This game is a chance to
They're
go
the
back.
Zaid of Final Fantasy VII.
They are very similar to Zaid. This is a game that is giving us the chance to go back and build on what came before. It doesn't delete the old game. The old game is still there. And I speak as someone who loves the old game, and I still want it, and I still play it. And I speak as someone who doesn't want the new game redone. I don't just want to have it released on PS4 or 5 again. It's already been released on PS4 or 5. I don't want to play a game in a 3D world. I don't want the studio to go to that effort to make this big 3D version of that world and have the game be exactly the same. I want them to do something new. We say we want this in gaming. We say we want it. So why wouldn't we play it?
I will say if I'm being completely honest with myself, I do want that in Final Fantasy VII. I want Final Fantasy VII brought into a modern engine. The only reason I'm not pushing for that is because I don't think it's worth the amount of effort it would take to make that game. I want that studio developing new things. I want them doing exactly what you've said. I just want magically Final Fantasy VII from 1997 to be a game that came out in 2024. That's it. Like that's not going to happen. And if somebody were to tell me that we're going to make the investment to make that happen, I'd be like, no, fuck you. You're wasting your time. I just really loved that original game. And if that original game had all of the polish that we have in modern gaming and all of the learning that's gone on in the last 30 years of video game development, I'd appreciate it more. But I don't want anybody taking time away from inventing new things in video gaming to give me that experience I had 30 years ago. It would be nice if somehow miraculously somebody gave me Final Fantasy VII, but it wasn't quite so, 8-bit almost and that's clearly an exaggeration, but like if it weren't so very clearly dated.
Well, I think we have the same approach. It's the way I describe oftentimes that Spanish language. I would love to speak Spanish, but I wouldn't love to learn it. I just wish I could. I think it's a beautiful language. I think the world's a richer place with Spanish in it. I'd love it if I could, but I don't want to learn it. I feel like that's not what I'm looking for. And
it's that very childish, I'd love to be great at this, but I'm not going to put the effort in.
Yeah. Oh, there's effort? I'll just dream about it instead.
I could just do the entire podcast in Spanish so that you'll have to learn it if you...
We can do it multilingual.
we can talk about how Duolingo has not prepared me for any actual Spanish conversation, despite the fact that I have been consistently working at it for over a year.
Oh, oddly enough, I think in attacking that point that we just did, I think you actually hit upon something, though, that is a reason why I would... It's not really a reason to recommend it, but it's almost a validation of the game's existence, and it's more the negation of a point against playing it. It's not a cash grab. And this is what it could so easily have been. Now, yeah, we can say, okay, this used to be 1 game, it's now 3. Isn't that clearly a cash grab? No. Go and look at the sheer amount of cost that this is taking. When you have a trilogy that has been in development since, what, 2016, 2015? We're 10 years in now. Oh, we're into the 11th calendar year from that time. And we haven't got the 3rd game yet. We have all these years of salaries, development costs. We have all these years of expertise. We have all these years of upgrading, engine changes, complications, games not being released while this team works on this. It's not a cash grab, and it's a labor of love. And that's what I've loved so much about playing these games, is it's pulled me back into gaming in a way that I wouldn't have expected a game to do. Is it a damning indictment of other games that the only game that could pull me back into gaming is a game that remakes a game from when I was 10 years old? Fuck yeah. Is it also a massive validation of what this game does? Yes, because the reason it pulls me in isn't the fact that I'm replaying a game from when I'm 10 years old, because I can go back and play Final Fantasy VII, and it does pull me in. Rebirth pulls me in a different way. It hits me in a different way. It's got a more, I feel, developed approach to its storytelling, which makes sense. It's not a 30-hour game. I always felt that Final Fantasy VII was too short, because it's not a 90-hour game. It's a 35-hour game with other things that you can do that can then bring it up to 100 hours if you want to go chocobo racing, do the side quests, the side missions.
I feel like that is the framework of every Final Fantasy game. The core story is maybe 40 to 50 hours. The complete do everything experience is 90 to 100 because, and it's almost not even a positive at that point, but the side quests take so much time. Like it would be great if, that's truly what I wanted, is to invest 60 hours racing chocobos, but chocobo racing is not that engaging that I want to do that for twice as long as I'm playing the main story. So yeah, I agree that it's the core story of most Final Fantasy games is relatively short, and it's kind of inflated by the side quests and just how much kind of grinding and effort you have to put into just repeating something over and over again to get the progression that you want to be overpowered when you get back to the main story.
Well, I think that's where you'd see Final Fantasy VII. It's really not that much longer than Final Fantasy 13. It might not be longer. And you don't do much in those games in a very different way to how you do in Final Fantasy 13. We present it very differently. When you go, for example, you exit Midgar onto the big world map, and you're going to decide, where do I go next? Well, in Final Fantasy 13, you've got a corridor, and you can go left and get that item, or you can go right and follow the story. In Final Fantasy 7, you can go left to Calm or right to the Chocobo Ranch. And that's really it. There's nothing else in between. We're putting a very different facade on it, and feeling counts. Feeling definitely counts in video games, because video games are, by definition, a collection of, essentially, are you doing this or that? One after the other. But the way we dress it up and the way we paint it feels so different. These games, if you just follow that straight path, much shorter. And this story, I think, had a lot more mileage in it than that. And this game now, I believe, Final Fantasy VII Remake is about 30 hours if you do the whole story. And the main side questing, which is part of the narrative, but not all the odd jobs, about 25, 30 hours. Rebirth, I didn't engage with as much side material as I would like because I had to rush finish it. It took me 75 hours, if I remember correctly. And that feels like an appropriate amount of time to tell this story. Legion, I interrupted you.
No. You were saying about the cash grab. I think they're on a record for saying they're kind of upside down on the production of this, but they're still moving forward with it. So when you said it was a labor of love, I think that's self-evident because they're already demonstrating that they didn't have the financial success that they were expecting to get back from it, But that goes back to what I was saying. If you're going to put it on PC, why wait this long? You make it an exclusive title for no reason. Put it on PC, get your money so that you can make other titles that we want you to see, or we want to see. So
I believe it's the simple thing we talked about before, though, isn't it? It's the Sony want to get what they perceive as a valuable selling point for their console. And it worked on me. I bought the PS5 not exclusively for this, but largely so that I would have the chance to play this. Didn't work on Banana, who to this day does not own a PS5. So for you, the reason we're having this topic is because it's gonna be on PC. Yeah, it's a very gamer unfriendly practice. It's not something I would ever defend. Apparently, with regards to the money and the sales, it seems to have hit fairly regular Final Fantasy numbers. It hasn't completely flopped. It hasn't done particularly well. It's just about normal. On the other hand, have you ever seen a Square publication where they've said they were happy with sales? Ever? In their life? Fuck me. It's not a thing. But
yeah,
no.
I feel like the only time they would ever be happy with the sales is 30 years later when they're still selling copies of Final Fantasy VII, the original. And
This is
even
what
then,
will matter.
I don't know if they're happy.
I do wonder about what the long term of the game is in that sense. This is going to be a game that I think upon its full release, it's not going to sell to millions of other people, but it will catch up with that audience who wanted it. People who said, I want to wait for the final release. I want all 3 games. I want them on PC. I want the bugs to have been worked out. There's not many, but I want them gone. And I want to play that full, complete Game of the Year edition, if you will. And that's where they'll start to see that long-term gain. Because I think it's a game that's good enough that it won't disappear. All you have to do is go and look at things like its Metacritic's reviews. Like, what games this last year were up at those numbers? Astrobot, Metaphor, Balatro, and that was about it. These were the games that were up together with each other in overall critic experience and gamer experience. But that doesn't really matter. All that is just an idea that the game, I think, will hang around. So, to the cash grab, to the labor of love part. In my mind, the cash grab would have been just re-releasing the original game.
Yeah.
That's the cash grab, because that is lazy. That's just doing that. What I love about the game is I feel like, and this is the labor of love point, at no point when they were making this game did someone say no. It almost feels as though the developer was just, okay, go for it. Because when you go and play this, there's the main story, which is that 50 hours, wherever it might be. And I think it's honestly incredibly told. But this is going to be a matter of perspective. There's going to be people who say I don't like it. There's going to be people who say I do. I think it's incredibly told. And I think they take characters who we already have an affinity for, and they make you love those characters and feel them in different ways. There are moments in particular between Cloud and Tifa which blow me away, which the original couldn't do. Moments with Barrett. I think Barrett is the character who in this game really gets the most of a glow up. Kate Sith gets a glow up. Yuffie gets a glow up. Finally, Red 13 gets a glow up. Barrett, it's a different level. So we've got the main story and the main arc. But JRPGs are a strange beast. They always have been. They're a weird form of gaming. And I mean this in the best way, because games should be weird. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, there is the Chocobo Racing, which is a good fucking kart racer. It's Mario Kart in Final Fantasy. There's the Fall Guys minigame where you have to play as a frog. There's the Shinra Parade, where you have to parade your soldiers through Junon. There's I wrote a whole bunch of things down. There's the card game, which I still, all respect to Balatro, think is the best card game that came out this year. It's got an entire world. There's the Fort Condor minigame. There's an entire a piano minigame. There's an entire world of games within this game that are all viable games. And I know what you're thinking, because I'm going to straw man you. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I'm not playing the game for the minigames. I want to play this game because of the story it tells. I want to play this game.
That's not what I was thinking.
Shut up, it was.
Mini games.
I was talking to Legion, obviously.
Yeah.
They're optional.
I wasn't paying attention. What? No.
Well, that's on the regular.
Yeah, that checks out.
They are optional. Truly optional. The game exists in a way that you can play it the way you want to. If you want to play this game and be done in 50, 60, I'm not sure exactly how long, but based on how much minigaming I did and how long I took, I'd say about 50 hours. And you can be done and play the whole narrative all the way through. If you want to do it in 200 and do every side thing, you can do that too. These mini games, you normally have to do them once in the game, have to, and that's it. And there's one enormous part where you have to play the card game, except you don't, you can bail out of the competition on day one. The entire thing is play it how you want it. And I think that's a wonderful thing. It's a modern AAA game that respects your fucking time as much as a major game like this can. Because a major game like this, it's not going to be 5 hours long. It's not going to be 10 hours long. It's going to be 50. But it respects your time. If you want to go away from the main story and play cards, you can. If you just want to beeline that main story, you can. Multiple convenient difficulties that you can play this without having to level up. There's a hard mode if you really want to go through and use the combat engine to its limits. And I think it's got one of the best combat systems I've ever used in a video game. It's a hard thing to do, to keep true to something and truly make it new. And they've done that, combining an action-based system with the Final Fantasy menu system that you see in-game. Something they never did in 15. They couldn't do it. They didn't do it in 16. They didn't do it in 13 and 12. All unique systems, all interesting. Better, worse, yeah, some of them. But this, I think they finally hit their stride. And they kept it. It's a game that I just think it deserves not more credit than it got. People were very, very kind to it. I think generally, yeah, there's a vocal group who don't like it for whatever reason. That's you, and you can do that. I think the game got like plenty of plaudits.
That group exists for every game at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to say it's underappreciated. It is definitely not. Again, go and look at the Metacritic stuff. It is very much appreciated. I just think you need to play it. Oh, and there's one tiny addition to that. So the mini games are optional, and there are little bits of story, or not story, but character hidden behind them, extra cutscenes and so forth. And I've had people say to me, like, but then you almost have to play them. No, you don't. No, you don't. Those are rewards for the players who want to go on and play it. You don't have to. And I had a friend say this to me, they said, there's so many optional minigames that it ruins my joy of the game. Neither I nor Square are responsible for your inability to control how many of these fucking minigames that you play. I'm afraid that's on you. I don't mean that in a hostile way, but that is on you. And it's a very awkward thing to take aim at the game for.
So this is something I noticed because I've seen that parade, the Shinra parade, in the remakes. And I remember in the original, I hated that part because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I know the actual
so awkward.
The performance at the end of the parade, that much I could wrap my head around. But that moment where you have to join the parade, that little mini game, and at the end the dude is like, what the hell was that soldier doing? And they send him a bomb because he did a bad job. I don't know what a good job was. The only reward I ever got, and I'm pretty sure there are different rewards.
Oh, there are.
The only reward I ever got was a grenade because I could never figure out what I was supposed to be doing and what I was doing wrong.
Well, to this day, when I know what I'm doing, it's just awkward as well. It's clumsy. And they say go, but when they say go, it doesn't look like you should go, but you actually should. Yeah. And you remember that on the second or third try.
And I think that was one of the things that made me that much more invested in wanting to play the remake and Rebirth, is there are probably 4 or 5 moments in the story of Final Fantasy VII that when I go back and play the original, I'm like, oh shit, it's this part again.
Yeah.
I don't like Wall Market. I think it's a boring little fetch quest. I don't like the snow. I like the snowboarding minigame. I don't like the sequence after the snowboarding minigame. I don't like the running around the snowy wasteland and trying to find that little hot spring so that I can go to the cave and get the Alexandra materia. I just want the materia and I want to move on with the story. That part didn't engage me. I love the idea that now in the remake and Rebirth, when I get to those parts, it'll be new and it'll hopefully be something that is engaging. It's not the same, I have to get through this again so I can continue the story. And watching that parade sequence in Rebirth, is that in Rebirth or is that in Remake?
Yeah, Remake is Midgar, Rebirth is everything after, up until the Forgotten City.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So in watching that sequence, watching somebody else play that in Rebirth, it not only felt new, which it needed to, but it felt engaging, it felt fun, it felt like, this is an interesting little mini game. I'm probably not going to sit here and do this for hours and hours, but it's not something that I'm like, I have to get through this tedious bullshit again. Whereas that does exist in the original, even for somebody like me who has that nostalgia of like, oh, I want to go back and play this story. Oh, fuck, I have to climb up to the Shinra Tower again and put batteries and everything. Like,
Well, one thing I noticed is that from a technological standpoint, so some background. Baldur's Gate 1, I loved it. Baldur's Gate 2, when it came out, my PC at the time didn't meet the specs, but it still let me play it. Even whether I, brought all the graphics all the way down, it seemed like it didn't matter. And this game, when I looked at some of the specs on it, the difference between low settings to high settings, not that much different. So I'm getting the impression that when the game comes out, it's going to be accessible to a lot of people who may not have the best rig. So that's a good thing.
It's not something that I can speak directly to because the game hasn't been released yet. And I've been told at times that I'm a Philistine with graphics because, frankly, I've played on the PS5 the performance mode, which plays at 60 FPS, and then there's pretty mode, which plays on 30. And yeah, I guess they're different. They are, but I don't know how much. If you look at, for example, the way that, it's the old story, but the way that I was playing Oblivion on my PC and how my friend was playing it on their Xbox, my PC was a piece of shit. Like, that looked awful. And compare it to their version of Oblivion they were running on the Xbox, standard. Yeah, it's a 2006 game. It doesn't look amazing today. But the difference in between those two levels of how we were playing was so vast. Now, the difference between playing a game on a mid-rig and a high-class rig, there are differences. But they're so much smaller now, that window of difference between them, as we improve the lighting, as we improve the shadows, as we improve air physics, whatever it might be. I don't think we see the night and day difference anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on it either. I'm just going with what I've seen on there. I've seen
I'm
best.
agreeing with you.
Yeah, and I've seen the lowest. I'm like, there can't be much difference if that's the setting, so therefore it should be accessible to most people, because you would think like if it's a high setting only, then you're going to need a high quality rig. But no. Yeah.
I think the thing to keep in mind for the PC players is do forget that this can run on a PS5. And the PS5 is a powerful console, but it's a powerful console. Most of people who are going to be really gaming, who have got a good rig, if it can run on that, it can run on your rig. Almost certainly. I can't speak directly on mine. It'll probably run on mine, and mine's a piece of trash. Mine will probably run this game because it's still more powerful than the PS5 is. But I think, honestly, Banana briefly hit up on a point that mattered so much to me when I was playing this, and it was one of the things that kept me.
Sound like me at all.
It was one word you happened to say.
Yeah. You accidentally brought it up and then moved on without really recognizing its importance.
I think you made the opposite point. It does something that I want my games to do. It's really fun. It's a fun experience. And I think that's what Final Fantasy was always really good at. Final Fantasy games were fun. They could have their serious moments, but it's always worth going back and thinking that in Final Fantasy VII, after you have Aerith in the Forgotten City, how much time is it before you're doing the snowboarding minigame? Half hour?
Yeah, it's not long at all.
They were very good at jumping between these tones, and we could also look at it in a very, very reducing way. We could say, actually, no, that's bad. They didn't linger on it. And yeah, you could definitely make that point. But if you want that style that's able to jump between these tones, I think the game does that incredibly well. It manages to let the heavy scenes hit and sink in, and you really feel them. But a little while later, we're playing cards again. And a little while later, Red 13's doing the moonwalk. No more spoilers than that. But Red 13 is doing the moonwalk. And that's what these games were so good at. And I think it's where this game really shone for me, was there are occasionally times when I'm playing a game and I'm missing the fun. And I've really, really enjoyed Kingdom Come Deliverance. I'd be lying if I said I had that much fun, except for the one mission where you get drunk with the priest. And that was when it had its fun and really let me enjoy that. This is a game that feels, and nostalgia plays a part, but it feels like I'm a kid again. And I think it'll do the same if you have that affinity for Final Fantasy. Maybe if you don't. But if you have that affinity for Final Fantasy, I think it'll do that for you too. And I would say to anyone who loves those games, if you don't try them, the new ones, if you try them, you don't like them, that's fine. It's fine. If you don't try them, you're doing yourself a disservice.
So the engagement is real high.
To mean?
Well, the engagement of your experience with the game is real high compared to like the engagement with Kingdom Come.
Oh, I loved every moment. And there are things that if I go back, I'll think, oh, fuck, I don't want to do that bit again. But they do tend to be quite short, and they do tend to be optional. I think on the whole, the game runs its story very, very well. The main thing you have to do. Which is actually another thing that I did want to mention as well. Which is, I think it's no secret at this point that the word remake in the title, and just very, very quickly, I've had someone complain to me before in a stream that they thought it was false advertising on the part of Square to call the game Final Fantasy Remake, and that the game actually is a part of the trilogy. They didn't know they were getting just the Midgar section of the original game. So the first 4 hours of the original game is now expanded into the 30-hour game 1 of the trilogy. I've had someone say it was false advertising to call it Final Fantasy Remake, and I just have to say, if we have to baby you to the point that you can't Google the most cursory thing about this series, sorry, bro. You're going to have to take that one for yourself. I think it also said on the back of the box, part 1 of 3. There's also that. But they don't remake the game in that literal sense. They remake the game in the literary sense. Essentially, it's being rewritten. We're telling the same story in a different way. We're approaching the same story and we're making modifications, we're making changes, following the main narrative and doing new and different things. There are people, myself included, who feel the game isn't actually directly a remake of the game itself, but who feel the story is being remade and actually what you're seeing is a sequel. So I don't think that's really a secret at this point. The details of it, if you haven't played it, you probably don't know. But there's a lot to say that we're not exactly experiencing the same story. Things are being told differently. And that, I think, is a good thing. Because again, the original game is still there, it still exists. And I want these people trying something new and trying something different. And time's going to tell if they stick the landing on it. But I feel it's been interesting enough telling its own story that it becomes just a worthwhile addition to the Final Fantasy canon. In a way that I feel that a remake in the original meaning wouldn't actually be of any value. I don't count Final Fantasy VIII Remaster as an additional entry in the Final Fantasy VIII catalog. This, I think, stands on its own as a truly independent series within the Final Fantasy VII canon. And to me, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I think the more I've learned about the remake and Rebirth, the more I've recognized them as you said, not cash grabs, as things that the studio has invested in to the point that they become independent games. So when you look at the Final Fantasy VII canon, there are a lot of spin-off games. And when you get a spin-off game, yeah, it's kind of playing on something that's already been established. It doesn't have to be a full experience in the way that a new entry would, but you're getting a new game. So like Dirge of Cerberus, it's an independent game. Nobody thought like, oh, I'm just getting Final Fantasy VII again. Now when you get the remake, it's closer to that than it is to a remake. It's closer to a new entry in the Final Fantasy VII canon than it is to Final Fantasy VII again. So yeah. I think that's one of the things that I eventually came around to recognize, and that's why I don't think of the remake and Rebirth the way I did when they were first announced. Like, oh, they're going to fuck up my favorite video game or something like that. Now it's, oh, they're building off of one of my favorite video games, and they're making an actual game out of it. They're not just saying like, hey, remember how you used to like that stuff? We're going to rely on you still liking that stuff because this is that stuff. It's nothing new.
Oh my man, if they had wanted to cash grab it and just, get your money, the easiest and most simple thing to do would have been what we say we want. Would have been just remake the original damn thing as it was. But it would have been such a shame. And I think that's where the real joy of this lies. And honestly, if you don't like it, that's fine. It is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I've had friends who play it who don't like it. And they played Remake and they won't go on and play Rebirth, and it's okay. But I think just as a fan of the series, you are doing yourself a misservice. This is not aimed at you, this is the collective you. You are doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least try it and just give it that bit of attention, especially now in the modern day when if you play on PlayStation, I believe the remake is actually free now on the PlayStation Plus, so it's in the subscription service. If you've signed up, you can almost certainly play it for free. And it's quite expensive on PC still, but I believe it goes on sale now and again and gets a bit more reasonable.
Yeah, it's at the moment, I think Steam's doing a $15 or $20 discount on it for pre-purchase.
Oh, discount, right.
For pre-purchase, yeah.
Oh, I actually meant the first part, so Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think even that is still quite expensive. You are right, though. There's definitely a pre-release sale.
The remake is currently available on Steam for $40. The Rebirth pre-order is $48.
That is much more reasonable than I expected.
It's going to be released, I think, at $69 though.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to
discount.
have that standard AAA pricing if it's not discounted, but it's currently discounted to $48.
Oh yeah, to be clear, just a second ago, when I said that, pardon me, when I said that that's a much better price than I expected, I meant for Rebirth. Remake, by now, it's a good few years old. It's not an enormous game. Like we say, it's 30, 35 hours long. That should probably be a bit cheaper than that now. And I would suggest that if you don't know if it's for you, do wait for that sale.
Yeah.
Do wait until it pulls down just a little bit. But don't let the fact that it's not the game that you wanted put you off giving it a try.
Yeah.
Because really...
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if they put a sale close to the release date of this one, just to kind of like...
Yeah. I was actually surprised that they weren't both on sale at the same time.
Yeah, you'd think because now is the perfect time to play Remake, isn't it? So that then when Rebirth hits on day one, you could have people suddenly picking that up and purchasing that, which I guess is what you really want, isn't it, with these studios, because the number looks good. Day one sales or pre-order sales. And you had your chance there. So no, that seems like a mystifying decision to me. Yeah. Maybe the logic, though, is that everyone who wants to play it has played it, which obviously isn't true, but maybe the majority of people who
fuck you, Square, I'll get around to it.
That seems a mystifying decision to have it at full price, even if the full price is lower.
Yeah, interesting series in terms of the full price for their games, because you go back and look at Final Fantasy VII, the original, still $20 on Steam.
I just bought 6 for $20.
Yeah, the game's almost 30 years old, and they still want you to pay for a game they're not maintaining. It doesn't require constant maintenance. It's not an online game. There's not an MMO. It's a property that they are not investing in anymore. It is pure profit for them every sale at this point, and they're still insisting that you pay an elevated price for something that you could easily play for free if you're motivated.
Well, that's why they should package that. Like if you buy Final Fantasy Rebirth, they should include...
I think there is a package deal of some kind.
Oh yeah, there are definitely bundles on Steam that are like the original and remake.
Oh, that would be a really bold and interesting decision if they said that. Yeah, so if you buy Rebirth now at this price, you get Remake. Like that would be really interesting. And I know they won't want to do that. It's a big company. They're going to say, no, we can still sell these separately. But that would have been such a bold, fan-friendly move.
But it would get interest in that series. And that's kind of my point, which may sell the online game. And it just...
Well, especially when this universe, specifically 7, has all of the surrounding games. There's Ever Crisis, which I think Banana's played a bit more, but they make their money on that from microtransactions, right?
Yeah.
Well, they definitely want to pull people into that then. Yep. And Ever Crisis plays a part in the remake trilogy. They're a part of the story, particularly Sephiroth's background, which will no doubt influence his character in the main trilogy that's being remade now. And there's story there to be found. If you can get a few more people playing that, that's a few more dollars coming your way. And then you've got the original canon. You can still resell that. Final Fantasy VII, what's it still cost? $20, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Well, is people now going to go play that? Crisis Core, just been re-released last year. You would imagine they'd want to pull as many people into their series now as they can.
Before we move too far past it, I just want to say, if you like Final Fantasy VII, don't play Ever Crisis. I fucking hate that game.
If you like Final Fantasy VII, just go on YouTube and have someone tell you what happened in the story of Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. It's enough. It's all I've been doing.
So that's the thing. Like, Ever Crisis, the game that I've been playing, it's not its own story, really. I mean, it pulls from a lot of the other established Final Fantasy VII stuff, and then it turns it into a gacha game where it's, log in every day, do these kind of repeated exercises, and they'll release special events that kind of make the game a little more engaging. But like, it's very much not a Final Fantasy game. It's a gacha game that uses Final Fantasy assets. So like, don't expect to like that if you like Final Fantasy VII. But it exists. If you're curious, check it out. It's free. Unless you actually want to enjoy it.
I'll say, like, you've put a few hours in it, haven't you? So it can't be the worst thing in the world. It's just...
That's not an indication of whether or not it's good.
Fair point. Yeah, League exists. Yeah.
Yeah, I've put thousands of hours into Destiny. It's not good. This is very much one of those things where, like, it's Final Fantasy VII assets, which I enjoy. And it's one of those games, like, I log into it, I play like 10, 15 minutes here and there. Yeah. Ignore it for a few hours, log in again. My energy has refilled to play another 10, 15 minutes there. So that, like, that number, that hours, is just the game takes time to let you even play the game. So naturally, I'm going to have a lot of time in it. But I just want to be clear, like, it's very much not a Final Fantasy game. It's Candy Crush with Final Fantasy assets. Like,
that's a nice way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
When you said you don't want to, like, get too far away from the topic as well, I just want to pull us back briefly to the PC edition of the game and the technical specifications. Bear in mind that Square hasn't always done a great job with their PC ports as well. So just keep that in mind for as the game is coming out. We've had the hardware specifications and so forth. They've notoriously not always done a great job with this. I would hope, bearing in mind what we said about the labor of love that they've made this to be, that they will put that bit of effort in and get this right. But it's a very quick turnaround onto PC for one of their games. 10 months, I think. Very fast by their standards, especially their agreements with Sony. Be cautious, I would say, for this. And you might be worth waiting for a few people to get their hands on it themselves. So a few reviewers, whatever it might be, and just see what their performance is like. Because it's almost certainly... You should almost certainly have some doubt before the game comes out as to how it's going to perform on day one.
I think there's an understandable optimism with this one, given that Rebirth uses the same engine that the remake did, right?
Yes. And it's largely the same team.
So they have their learned experience from the port of remake that they can leverage to hopefully make this a smoother transition. But yeah, I'd agree. You definitely notice those issues when they port to a different platform. It's not always that smooth transition you're hoping for. So I agree. Just look into it with a grain of salt, but I would definitely expect this to be a better port than remake was on its initial release.
I would say that's actually worth considering, yeah. So you have the same team. They were still working for this game on their customized Unreal 4 engine, so it's not new yet. I think for the next game they're moving to 5, but it didn't happen in between. You may well be right that actually that can probably go a long way to softening the pessimism that one might have there. I did have another thing that I just wanted to... I've got to re-find it in my notes. Tut. Nope, I've lost it.
Well, the only thing I can add to it is that from a style standpoint, I'd say as a JRPG, it's unique. I know to you guys probably it's a little bit more familiar and stuff, but I've seen a lot of more recent JRPGs and they're definitely going into that anime style, which I don't hate. You know, Scarlet Nexus, I like playing that. You've been playing Code Vein, and I think Banana. So,
and I've been playing Metaphor, which is very anime style.
Yeah, but this game doesn't look like that. So if you're looking for a game that's still that JRPG, but is not going down the same anime style, I mean, it's definitely something to look into.
I remembered what it was. And it was to do with aesthetics and style and imagination. And it was just give yourself the chance. And this is speaking specifically to people who played the original. And particularly if you played it as a kid, because remember the work that your imagination did to build these areas. Give it a chance and see what they did with these new places. Go and see how it is an open world game. so to speak. It's multiple separated open world maps, so each self-contained. But go through and see what you think about it, because you have maps for a few major areas. I'll just name a few of them, not all. So you're going to have the maps for the grasslands, which is calm. You're going to have the map for the Junon area, which is going to be south of the main mountains. And you're going to have, let's do another one, the map for Gongaga. Very, very small part of the original game. Every one of these biomes is completely and utterly different. And they all have different mechanics. Some of them are traversable primarily on foot. Some of them you actually kind of fly. Some of them you bounce around on gigantic mushrooms, leaping from area to area. It's really awkward. I hate it. It's a game that just didn't really know, and this could be for the worse. It didn't know when to say no. It was like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of imagination in there, a lot of fun, and they let themselves lean into it in a way that I don't feel AAA always lets you do nowadays. We try to keep things relatively streamlined, and yes, you do have the towers. In each area of the map, there's a couple of towers you go to, and when you activate them, you activate the markers on the map, so you can go around and pick these things up. Yeah, that's a bit of a trope. I'm a bit sick of it too. Don't get me wrong. But you get to do that exploration in the desert area. You get to do it in the beach area. You get to do it in the lush mountains area. You get to do it in the tropical area. You get to do it in the genuinely mountainous area. So not the mountain lowlands, but the mountainous area. You get to go into the rocky, craggy shoreline around Junon. Just go and give yourself a chance and let your mind remember what you pictured as a kid and see how it feels compared to this. And then remember that waiting for you, just a few chapters into the game, is a full-scale gold saucer. What else could you want?
That one is pretty exciting. I think that's one that's going to appeal to a lot of people, because for most of us, we loved Gold Saucer, but it felt brief and small and really like a missed opportunity because of those things, because it's completely optional and there's really not a ton to do there in the original, but it felt like it should be fun.
Yeah.
So I think having them remake that experience for Gold Saucer particularly is exciting. It's something I'm really looking forward to seeing.
We've got a full-scale theme park in a game. What else could you want, right?
Well, you sold me on doing it in the mountains. I like doing it in the mountains.
Oh, baby. I think that we've sort of hit across quite a lot of points, and I think really there's not a huge amount else that you can add to it. I think, in brief, summing it up, it's what AAA gaming should be, in that it's got the polished nature of being made by a major studio for that very large budget, whilst being incredibly creative and fun. So it's the AAA ideal, if you will. The money, the motivation, the resources behind the project, allied with the creative mind of someone who wanted to go out there and do something different and build a project they really wanted. Yeah. It's got the character development for these age-old characters that we know and love, and gives them a chance to get the glow up they didn't get. Final Fantasy VII, I'm sorry to say, the original is too fucking short in the original. It's such a shame that's the biggest critique I've got of it, is I wish it were longer. I wish I had more dialogue. And the two people that we talked about before the podcast started, Yuffie and Vincent, I wish they'd gotten more time. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to get Vincent in this because he's going to come in late, but Yuffie gets a glow up and you get to have a real chance to see who this character is and what they are. So we've got the AAA studio of a high quality. We've got the major character moments. We've got the fact they took risks with their story. Now, if you don't want that, and if you are sure you don't want that, okay, the game's not for you. But they did. So if you think maybe it's worth trying it, you've got we can talk about the graphics if you want, but the graphics, the world building, the appearance that they set on this game, the expansion of the world itself, the expansion of the lore in that world, I think they did an incredible job there. They brought a combat system which, it's an incredible combat system for what it is, but I don't think I want to replay a game with that whole combat system now. They found a way to bring that into the 21st century while still respecting the original and what it actually held onto. And finally, the side content is optional and there's fucking loads of it. And second, and again, they did release the best card game of 2024. Ugh. And then the final point is just one that I didn't think I addressed, which was the one thing it did win at the Game Awards. And I think the fact that it didn't win at the Game Awards generally is fine. This was a fucking great year for those top titles. Like, you look at the sheer quality of Astrobot if you look at the sheer quality of Metaphor, yeah, games will lose to those, and it's fine. Look at the one they won. The music in this game is fucking disgusting. And I mean that in the British sense of it's fucking brilliant. I think it accomplishes musically something that no other game has done on a technical level. It is outstanding. All the variants on the themes, and yeah, they're variants of old themes, but that doesn't take away the artistry it took to compose these things. Musically, it's an achievement that I'm pretty sure if it were to be remembered for one thing, which it won't be, it's not how gaming works, but if you were to remember this game for one thing, it would probably be the music.
It's funny that you mentioned that variations on a theme kind of idea that they're using in the remake, because it was one of the things that I remember from Skyrim was people praising the soundtrack, and the Skyrim soundtrack is just the Morrowind soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
It's just variations on a theme, and they did a great job with it, but it's not new.
No, it's variations in the sense, I mean, there are original songs in Skyrim as well, but we think of the main theme, it is just the Morrowind theme, but very sexed up. It's done differently, it's arranged differently. These aren't
I really enjoyed that main theme, but it's one of those things where, like, I don't want to give it too much credit. It is a variation on an existing theme, and it's done excellently, and it's engaging and fun, but it's not new.
Yeah. What you find in Rebirth is somewhat different. It's reworking the themes in the sense of, if you think of the way the opera works, or any cohesive work. So imagine you listen to, at the very start of an opera, and you listen to the overture, and we're going to hear one by one the musical themes that are going to come back later. So we hear, okay, we've got that one melody, that one, all right, who are they attached to? You keep watching the opera and you think, oh, that's attached to this character, that's attached to this motivation, this, whatever it might be. Now this is going to do that, but then it's going to alter the themes. It's not just going to alter the instrumentation, it's going to alter the themes themselves. It's going to alter the notes that are being used. It's going to alter the pacing that they're being played at. It's going to alter the instrumentation too, sure, to the point that some of them don't really sound like the same theme anymore. But it's in there because they've completely altered it modally. They've completely altered it on I've forgotten what the word for a change of speed is, but either way, the tempo has been altered. And they go more than just a re-instrumentation. They're rewriting the music as it goes. And also, there's just some fucking great original songs. Bow, wow, wow. Just saying.
I don't think that you really kind of took the wrong message away from what I said, but I just want to make a clarification. When I brought up Skyrim being variations on the Morrowind theme, I just wanted to say that, like, if you hear that phrase, variations on a theme, and it discourages you from investing in Final Fantasy Remake, I'm trying to point out that Skyrim was praised for its music, and it was variations on a theme. So don't expect to be disappointed just because you've heard its variations on existing music, because I still enjoy the Skyrim soundtrack, even knowing it's the same melody that was in Morrowind.
Yeah, I think a reimagining doesn't have to be derivative by its very nature. It can have its own value. Yeah, I think I definitely misunderstood you.
Yeah, well, me, when I was a huge Morrowind fan, still a big Morrowind fan, and is rediscovering Morrowind, when Skyrim came out with that, and I recognized it right away, I was like, oh. I was genuinely excited because Oblivion didn't do that for me at all. I was like, oh, they remembered. Oh, it was so great to connect those things together. So it stood on its own, just like you're saying, Banana, but it wouldn't have been able to do that and connect with me unless they actually connected that with Morrowind. So to a greater degree, if you're connecting dots that were there already, they can really help solidify your excitement about that game. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they use an audible language. Sort of, they're describing characters, they're describing moments through the soundtrack. And one of the most beautiful things that they do, and you'll just hear it now and again, there's some very on the nose versions and some much softer ones, is there's a certain bleed in between the themes of three characters, which is Aerith, Jenova, and Sephiroth. that they use in incredible ways, merging these three themes of these three very different characters who actually have a very strong bond between them. And they just have a way of reinforcing what the game is telling you on the screen, what it's telling you through the dialogue with their music, which is what music's for. That's what it should be doing.
It feels like it's tying back to discussions we've had from our music episode, which we've said probably a topic we will revisit.
Yeah.
It's very much that storytelling through music, to say that you have these three characters who have different motivations. Sephiroth and Genova a bit linked, but these characters are all linked in story and essentially in origin, but they become very different, very kind of independent entities, but using the music as an additional tool to highlight the things that they have in common is a really effective practice. And I think it showcases one of those things that's less obvious when you think about music, of what you can really do with music. And the idea that kind of bleeding between these themes showcases that there's an element, not only musically, but an element of the characters that isn't too independent from what are essentially antagonists, people who should be on opposite ends. They have something that actually links them together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think occasionally video games get this right, but it's still something video games are getting better at, I feel, is they haven't taken advantage yet fully of what music can do and what music can be. And this isn't the best game that's ever going to do music. We will find ways to improve on this, but I think it uses music in such an incredible way that it could genuinely be a moment in video game history that when you look back at what games had major influences on how we use music in gaming, it could be one of those games that you look back on and say, oh yeah, that one actually did something. That one we will remember in the way that you do remember the original. The original is an iconic soundtrack. And I think if any one part of this game, like I say, will be remembered, or if any one part of this game will be taken on as having done something really, truly interesting, it may well end up being the music. So maybe it's just perfectly fitting that that's the award that they did win.
Yeah, I was just about to say, very bold take to say that the thing that will be remembered about this game is the part that won it an award.
And don't get me wrong, I would have loved it to win all the others. I really would have. I thought it's that good a game. The performances are outstanding. The technical aspects are astounding. The storytelling, the design. But it was such a good year for top level games that there was no shame in losing to any of those.
Yeah. I probably would have made a fuss if it won over Wukong, which Astrobot winning came out of left field for me. I was like, okay, whatever.
I've still got to try Wukong. I think the thing that put me off it was when I went and I looked just before the Game Awards and I thought, I'm just going to go and look at the Metacritics. I'm just going to look at it. It's not a be all and end all, but I'm just going to go and look. And then I was looking at the top and it was like Astrobot, Metaphor, Rebirth, like Helldivers a little bit below that. And I was going like, where the fuck is Wukong? I had to go so far down and it just kind of put me off. It put that seed of doubt in my head. I'll get to it at some point, but
it's a strong RPG through those bosses. It wasn't just like boss battle, boss battle, boss battle. It told the story through those boss battles.
I understand why Legion enjoys Wukong, is because it's a Souls-like that abandoned the thing that all Souls-like do, and that it's focusing on gameplay over storytelling. I think in a lot of our experiences, the Souls games, even with Elden Ring, like you have to invest to get the story.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to, I would say Elden Ring does a better job of it than the others, but it's very easy to just treat it like a boss rush.
Yes.
And in Wukong, the gameplay fits that boss rush kind of mechanism, but you're never abandoning the story to get that. Every boss fight is storytelling. Every boss fight has a discussion at the beginning, a confrontation where the enemy that you're about to fight is calling you out and giving you a reason to understand the conflict between these two entities, where you don't normally get that from Souls games. And that's one of Legion's biggest objections to the Souls game is I don't want to have to go look for the story or or put it together myself or make up my own version of events. Give me the story and make the gameplay fun enough that I want to keep engaging in that story.
Well, this is the real problem with Elden Ring, and there was sort of 2 points. One of them, this is not a defense of it, is there's so many bosses in that game that you couldn't have a coherent, well-displayed story for all of them, and that's an indictment of Elden Ring, by the way. There's so many in there that at a certain point, I am just boss rushing. Because I want XP, or I want runes, or whatever it is. And the other part is, I loved Elden Ring. But I can tell you what my very favorite moment of playing Elden Ring was. And it was going on YouTube and having VartyVidya tell me what the fucking story was. Like, it wasn't even the game itself. It was the experience around it and the understanding of the world. And as great a game as it is, it doesn't do a good job of communicating that story to you.
Yeah.
It communicates the story to you. It just doesn't do a good job at it.
Yeah, I think it's that story exists in the game, and like you said, it's a good story, but you had to go to a different resource to have somebody explain it to you. Whereas I think Legion would much rather see the game provide you with everything you need to appreciate that story, to the point that you don't need to go watch a YouTube video of somebody who's compiled all of the data points together to know what the hell the story was.
And that's what I want to. I much prefer that. I think the reason that I love Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne is because the gameplay is so fucking good.
Yeah.
That's it. And I love the worlds that they're in now that I know what they are, now that I've watched those videos. But in the initial playthrough, it was never the story that took me, ever. It was just, that was fun.
Well, I won't spoil anything. I'll just kind of give you like a general description.
I forget.
Like, there are moments, several of them in Wukong, where it's a side boss, but you're kind of encouraged to, because you can go hit the main bosses and maybe if you're good enough, you can finish it. But if you took the time and listened to what they said and, you know, maybe zigged when you should have zagged or something, you'll find like there was this side content, an entire area that will have a side boss that's real easy to beat. Mm-hmm. Real easy to beat. But he's just kind of like an older guardian. He was like, I did my good. Go talk to the guy. And you go talk to this guy and he like actually faces you with a boss that you could beat. He's may not be easy, but he's beatable in like one or two tries. But then they give you a piece of equipment that now that real hard boss that you were kind of confronted with the main story is now very beatable. Suddenly it unlocks that story that says this is actually how this person was supposedly beaten in their canon run, because you had this trinket and you use that trinket during that battle and suddenly you have the advantage. That's how it tells the story.
I can actually add on to that, by the way. You just said about that you will find sort of a new area, find something new to do if you go off and engage with these side bosses. To pull it onto Final Fantasy for a second, they don't do that. Rebirth will not hide areas from you. They want you to see everything. So there are side quests, and I really love the side quests in the game because they are focused. They will be attached to a party member. So you will go and start a side quest, and let's say you've got Tifa on your left shoulder, Barrett's over your right shoulder. You go up and you talk to someone. I'm going to start your quest now. They say a line of dialogue, and all of a sudden one of your party members will come into frame and they're going to join in. That's going to be one of their side quests. You're going to fight the battles with everyone. You'll fight with whoever you want, but it's associated with that person, and they help you deal with some of the dialogue. So every single side quest is attached to a party member. That means every single side quest has a moment of character building for that party member. It's not just your main character interacting with some faceless NPC. And every one of those side quests has something to it. The person you're talking to is named, or if they're not named, they've got a character name that reflects their personality in some way. They have a little story they're trying to tell. And yeah, ultimately, a side quest, you're going to go somewhere, you're going to kill some monsters, and you're going to come back. That's generally how side quests work. We did it in The Witcher, and we'll do it in this too. But it does it in a way that you get character moments all through the game. And it's not going to show you new areas, but it will take you into those little pockets of the map that you might not have gone to otherwise. So it's not going to be quite as interesting as all those side quests in Wukong would have been, but it will take you somewhere new. But the main thing it's going to offer you, which is what these games are fucking about. We talked about this before. Final Fantasy is not about the fucking boss. It's not about the overall narrative even. It's All the best Final Fantasies are about the player characters and their interactions with each other. It's just the best parts, and that's what this is fucking good at. And it really gives you that extra time with these characters that you've probably maybe didn't realize that you didn't get, but now you're going to get it if you want it.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, there's so many people that have played like games like Wukong. I experienced it kind of like how I went back and remembered my Metroid training. Look everywhere. What is unique about this room? Why is it smaller than the rest? And there's usually that clue if you kind of read the environment and say, why is this guy so hard and it's such a small area? It's hard to navigate. I can't maneuver. There's a reason for it. And sometimes that reason means that if you move, he'll hit the wall. Suddenly there's a crack in the wall that when you defeat him, now you can walk through it. But it would have never happened just fighting him stand alone, being overpowered. That's how it tells a story. So, but that was my Metroid training. But like you're saying, like a lot of stuff in the Final Fantasy, it's the experience, the overall game experience, which I also love. Get me involved in the story. Pull me in. Yeah.
If you go and watch the TV series Haunting of Hill House, it's not about a haunted house. It's about the family. It's about the people involved. As everything good is.
Yeah.
It's
The Walking Dead isn't about The Walking Dead. It's about the people who aren't dead yet.
And there you go. And even the title has a fucking allusion to that inside of it. Because what are these people who are trying to stay alive in this world surrounded by the dead? They are the Walking Dead. So even the title almost implies who it's really about. But yeah, that's what the best stories are. They're about people. They're about people's interactions with one another. And that's what a party of, in the remake 4, in Rebirth, a party of 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9. Yeah, that's what the party is. It's just this group of people and their relationships with each other. And there is, and I'm just going to point this one out, there's a scene in Remake, not Rebirth. And it's, yeah, this actually isn't new story, so I can just very quickly. So in the original, the plate is being dropped upon Sector 7. The entire city exists on 2 levels. There's the ground level and then an entire disc above it, and people live on that disc. And Shinra, the big baddie, is going to drop part of that city onto the slums below and crush everyone to death. That scene's going on. Barrett's daughter is somewhere in there. They know probably where, and someone's going to have to go get her and get her out. So they send the flower girl to go and get that child. And it all takes place off screen. It doesn't take place off screen in Remake. And they spend so much longer on that scene than they need to. They spend probably 4 or 5 minutes with this little tiny child talking to this temporary mother figure who's just dropped in for a few minutes. They don't need to spend that time there, but no one in the development said no. And it's perfect. If you want those characters and that time with them, you get those character moments in this game, and that's what it's so fucking special at. Character moments.
I think that actually highlights one of the things we talked about before we started recording, which was those characters like Vincent and Yuffie. You want that development, you want that interaction, but you didn't get it in the original, because even Yuffie's quest to actually learn the little bit about her that is available in game is not something that's ever communicated to you unless you happen to go look for it. If you take the aircraft after it's shot down and sail west, then you'll find Wutai. Then you'll find Yuffie's family and the community that she was raised in, and get into her backstory and who she is as a character. And it was so underutilized in the original that it was disappointing. Like, even now I can go back and say that, like, I liked the character of Yuffie in the original, but I feel like she wasn't the version of the character that even the developers wanted her to be, just because they didn't have the opportunity to develop her as much. You got a taste of what she could have been and a lot of wasted potential, which they've addressed in the remake and Rebirth. So it's another reason I'm looking forward to getting to play those two. I've heard
why I'm looking forward to part 3. I'm looking forward to part 3 because we haven't had that with Vincent yet. Vincent comes in late. If I've told you that it goes from Calm up until the Forgotten City, well, Vincent's coming in very much towards the end of that, if you got him at the earliest possibility in the original game. But in game 3,
It's also probably why Sid is not in Ever Crisis, because Ever Crisis is just pulling in assets from other games. We haven't gotten Sid yet.
yeah, I mean, Sid's in Rebirth, but very minor role, because technically we should have met him in the original. They do make some alterations there. There is a certain lovely town we don't get to see, but in game 3, hopefully we'll have that extra time with them then. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the final battle. I'm not looking forward to the Northern Cave, except for the music. Oh my days, I want that. But I am looking forward to seeing how these characters interact with each other. I am looking forward to having more time with them.
I'm not looking forward to learning the last ability for the enemy skill materia 8 steps away from the final boss. Fuck you.
I'm not looking forward to
Final
giving those
Fantasy
fucking
games.
pots elixirs.
Yeah.
Just so I can level.
Just to grind AP. Yeah. But that was one that pissed me off so much.
Was that enemy skill the one that the enemy only ever uses once as well? And if you don't get it, then it's the
I
dragon,
don't think
right?
so. I think. Well, actually, it might be. There's like an insectoid enemy that I think you only ever encounter as a forced encounter on those steps that lead down to the final battle, the like isolated platforms. So yeah, it might be a one-time thing that you have to. It has to occur in that battle. It's not guaranteed to happen, and you have to have the enemy skill materia equipped to get it. So yeah, it might be, but it's also This was one of those things that like frustrated me, because in every Final Fantasy game, there are those side quests that allow you to prepare for the final boss, and it feels like they are at least far enough removed that you're not accidentally encountering the final boss as you complete the side quest.
Yeah.
In Final Fantasy VII, you didn't get that because of that enemy skill and the fact that the shield materia is only obtainable in the Northern Cave.
Of course it is.
And so you have to remember, oh, now I have what should hopefully be the last magic materia. I have to go master this now and then go back to Cosmo Canyon and get master magic, because I'm 10 seconds away from fighting the final boss of the game and I got a new spell.
I forgot about that.
So there were definitely some issues with the way the side questing worked in the original.
Love that game.
Well, I'm glad we covered this as kind of our prequel to our real topic today, which is Star Wars games. No.
Yeah.
I'm glad this prequel discussion lasted an hour and a half.
The final point. Should you play Final Fantasy Remake and Rebirth? Banana, yes. Legion, no. Not until you play Final Fantasy X. Then yes.
And we should point out, I had a different entry in the series for the first Final Fantasy game you should play. So go
15?
check out the Final Fantasy episode. Yeah, it was 15.
Cut me out. We don't need to have that now, because now people don't have to go watch the Final Fantasy episode. Shit.
Yeah, way to fuck it up. I will say the first episode of the Tactics Let's Play, the end card points to the Final Fantasy episode. So we're already advertising there. You're okay.
But no one knows what Legion picked as the first Final Fantasy game.
1.
Legion, I feel like you were not paying attention to the conversation that just happened.
Oh,
I do love the idea that Legion not paying attention has become a running joke on the series.
Ooh, I'm glad I took my caffeine pill. I just woke up.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah, Legion is now tuned in because we're gonna talk about Star Wars.
Let's go. Let's get it done.
This episode can finally start.
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody being here today.
And we appreciate you being here today.
No, I appreciate y'all even more, because without y'all, I definitely can't put all this together.
Because without y'all, this episode would have been 18 seconds. Just Legion saying, hey, it looks like Rebirth is coming to PC.
Yep, January. We'll look out for it. Yeah. Yeah. So we will check you guys later. Like, subscribe, comment, and then hit the alert icon button for sure. Common's doing a Morrowind run. It's very interesting. And Banana is doing a Final Fantasy Tactics Let's Play. Check that out. He's very entertaining. All right, we'll check you guys later. Bye-bye.